Hey Insiders, Brian Reese here, coming at you live from San Antonio, Texas. I told you I was going to be doing this. I just posted a message inside our group and said, hey, I'm going to be live at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, which is right now, August 24th, Thursday, to deep dive my story, my real story that happened today, and how you navigate a C&P exam for PTSD. Or any other type of mental health condition, okay? So I want to describe the good, the bad, and the ugly. So there's going to be three parts of this today. I'm going to answer a couple questions up front because some folks asked me about, Brian, were you filing for an increase? Did you get popped randomly for a reevaluation? Because I know that that's a concern for a number of veterans and folks in this group. So I'll address that too, okay? So let me start off with the good. So the good news is the VA is getting faster. They're getting more efficient. They're getting a lot better in their processes. Okay, I shared some of this stuff with some of my team members already, but I filed for an increase in a number of different areas last week. Okay, last week, in the span literally of 6 or 7 days, a contracted company called LHI Incorporated made appointments with private physicians for me here in San Antonio, which is where I live, to be seen for DBQ review, so Disability Benefit Questionnaire review. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, as well as conduct the actual assessments for the items that I filed for as an increase. So just so you know, whether you filed for the first time, or you filed for an increase or reevaluations, this is a very common process now. The VA, in an effort to get faster, has pumped a lot of dollars into contracts with private companies who act as schedulers. So LHI is one. What the heck's the other one? It starts with a Q. You know what I'm talking about, though. But they're either conducting the examination, they're scheduling the examination, or both. But what that means is you may or may not be seen by a VA facility and by a VA doctor. If you're jumping on live, awesome, glad you're here. Hope some folks can catch the replay because this is going to be total value bomb dropping here. So anyway, the exams happened very fast. So today was my exam for an increase in my PTSD, and I was scheduled with a private physician here in San Antonio, a U.S. board registered and certified psychologist. So that's pretty common. It's somebody who can diagnose mental health conditions, somebody who's very familiar with actually not just diagnosing, but also severity of your symptoms. So I'm going to post the link here in a minute, but I want you guys to all be aware of this, okay? When you go in for a C&P exam for PTSD or any kind of mental health condition, they're going to do some type of a pre-intake with you. Okay, so when you check in, they're going to give you some documents to fill out. Took me about half an hour to fill out paper that they gave me, which was to assess my current severity of symptoms with PTSD. So what the place used, and this is what the VA recommends. Okay, there's all kinds of bodies of knowledge on PTSD and mental health research, and what are the best measures of it, what scale should you use, what number do you need to hit to be diagnosed with PTSD or a mental health condition, and then how do you document changes, severity of symptoms, which for us, of course, corresponds to a rating, which equals compensation. So I go through these assessments. I actually had at least 4 assessments. There might have been 5. And the links, the assessments that I took were the exact same documents from the VA's website for doctors, for certified psychologists to use and administer exams for mental health for veterans. Okay, so I'm going to post that link and I'm going to post those documents so that you can actually see the questions and get an idea of how you might answer them. So the first one I had to fill out was called the PCL-5. Okay, now what that it basically stands for is it's tied to a diagnostic code, which is the mental health rating for PTSD. So if you've ever looked at your form, you'll see like Axis 1, which is a diagnosis of whatever condition. PTSD, major depressive disorder, adjustment disorder, whatever. Axis 2 is there any other kind of diagnosis possible? Or is there another diagnosis, yes or no? You'll see some kind of a criterion code. Eventually it spits out a GAF score, a global assessment of functioning, which is the VA raters subjective/objective assessment of how you're doing on that day. That score ranges from 0 to 100. 100 means you're fully functioning, there's no issues. 0 means you're not functioning at all, you're basically on suicide watch and you cannot function without help. So GAF scores of around 45 to 55 typically render a PTSD rating or a mental health rating by the VA of around 50%, sometimes 70%, depending on your severity of symptoms. The higher the number, the less severe. The lower the number, the more severe. So I've had GAF scores range anywhere from 30-ish to 45, which puts me in the range for severe PTSD. But I actually think my GAF score could be even lower than that. And so I'll talk a little bit about that in as much as I want to tell you. But so I go through this questionnaire. So the first one is the PCL-5, okay? PCL and M5. So there were 2 assessments associated with this. One is just basically the general checklist. It's 20 items, standard. This was developed back in the 1990s. And it has severity from either 0 to 5 or 0 to 4. Depends on which one they use. 5 means, or 4 or 5 means extremely, meaning there's symptoms that you have that are so severe. And then it goes all the way down to not at all, right? Which would be like a 0. So all of those items in my pre-intake, I had to circle things such as I'm having trouble, difficulty sleeping, falling asleep, or staying asleep. And you can either check not at all or extremely, okay? So when you answer those questions, they're all tied. The examiner is actually going to calculate a raw score based on how you answer that. And that's going to be part of their assessment, okay? Now that assessment sets the minimum threshold for establishing severity of symptoms for PTSD or for any other type of mental health condition. That's what that's for, okay? They also administered to me today that same type of sheet with something called with criterion A. Okay. Now, what criterion A is it includes additional fill-in questions. All right. So it talked about stressors, life stressor events. There was a separate life stress questionnaire. Talked about, was I ever in combat? Was I exposed to threat of violence or death? Was I the witness? Was I the person participating? That kind of stuff. And so it had check boxes and circle marks and all that. All of this is to tell you that these exact examinations and these exact tests are what they're administering now nationwide, okay? So whether you see a private doctor or whether you see a physician at the VA, they're likely going to be certified. Well, they have to be certified by the VA to administer C&P exams, and they're going to walk you through those checklists, okay? Now, remind you, I'm sitting in the waiting room this morning filling in all of this information, okay? They asked me about, have I had any legal troubles? Am I having financial problems? Am I having trouble? Have I had a divorce recently? Do I have kids? What's my education level? What kind of grades did I get? Okay? They're asking all of these questions because, okay, this is the good. I think it's good that they scheduled it fast, they got me in, and they're allowing me to, us as veterans, to enter our answers to these questions. They're taking it very seriously. Okay, that's the good. All of this stuff flows through to something called the PTSD Examiner's DBQ, Disability Benefit Questionnaire, which, as you've noticed, if you've recently filed a claim or you filed for an increase, the VA inside of eBenefits has recommended disability benefits questionnaires for, I think it's over 70 rateable disabilities now. It might be even higher. Okay, so now I'm going to shift into some of the bad. So the DBQs, I think, are good and bad. It's good in the sense that it's setting a standard questionnaire and criterion rating for raters, psychologists, psychiatrists, or anyone. Could be an orthopedic doctor evaluating your shoulder or your knee or your back. It's setting a baseline level of the questions they're going to answer on their computer about you, which ties to the three things we talk about all the time. All right? To get disability compensation, you've got to have 1, a medical diagnosis. 2, you have to have a clear link between your current disability and your military service. We also call that the nexus. So that's number 2. Number 3 is severity of symptoms. You have to have symptoms that are chronic and persistent relating to those. Okay, so those are the 3 things that I want you to remember. And the VA has brought about the DBQs, the Disability Benefit Questionnaire, to help speed along the process, not just for the veteran, but also for the VA. The VA is getting much faster, okay? When I separated from the military in 2012, I filed my claim the day after I left active duty. It took 13 months for them to make a rating decision. Right now, they're around 3 to 4 months, and they're actually getting even faster. So the good is, I got my exam scheduled quickly. I got in right away. I was filing for increases, so don't be worried, folks. I didn't get popped for an exam. I filed for an increase, so that's why I got hit for a C&P exam, okay? Now, again, though, the bad, I think, is these DBQs, they're out there, but what the VA has done is they've shifted the burden to the veteran, okay? They're basically saying, hey, when you're on e-benefits, if you file a claim, print out this DBQ and, you know, either take it to a private physician or take it to someone who's licensed to actually conduct examinations and fill that in for you and sign it, and then they're supposed to either fax it in or upload it to e-benefits. I think that that's bad because I don't believe that they should shift that burden on the veteran. A lot of veterans don't even know what DBQs are. And I also think that it's kind of setting a bad precedent. It's not like you walk into these exams and say, you know, hey, here's my DBQ. I filled it out. I just need you to sign here. I think that would look bad. It's almost like made in bad faith. And so it's almost like the VA attempted to do good, but I think they've inadvertently created kind of this awkward barrier between, you know, oh, you're just a sucker veteran trying to get benefits. And especially if you're seeing a private doctor, they might not know what those DBQs are. They might not have seen them before, and they might be hesitant to fill them out for you or sign their name or whatever. So the DBQs are interesting. You know, they recommend you do them and you upload them yourself. But what I will tell you is the VA examiner conducting your C&P exam. So for me, it was for PTSD today, C&P exam. They actually answered all of those questions that are on the DBQ that the VA provides you on e-benefits. They answered those exact same questions on the computer, okay? That system then is supposed to flow forward to the VA's system. Does it always? I don't think it does. So a lot of times they're faxing that information, but it's supposed to be syncing seamlessly. So that's kind of the bad, I think, is these DBQs. It happened so fast that I didn't feel like I had a great time to prepare, but that was okay. I was ready for it anyway. All right, so we talked about the good, we talked about the bad. I'm going to post all the links to all of those assessments so you guys can see them and you can look at the questionnaires. You can look at kind of what the raw score is and what it takes for a diagnosis for PTSD or mental health condition. It talks about severity and then GAF scores, and you can take a look then at how you're actually going to be rated by the VA. Again, PTSD and mental health conditions are rated from 0% to 100%. 100% meaning total occupational and social impairment. Basically, you can't function in society. It talks about delusional thoughts, hallucinations, all that. Down to 0%, which is basically no reoccurring or persistent symptoms. 10% talks about being controlled with continuous use of medication. So anyway, I won't run through all that, but it goes 0, 10, 30, 50, 70, 100. That's how PTSD and mental health ratings come about. That's why we also consider it a high value claim, because a lot of veterans can get 50% or 70% from that one claim alone. Okay, it's a big one, so you got to make sure you do it right. And on the flip side, you need to make sure you're getting the help you need, whether that's medication, counseling, frequent visits, vet center support groups, all that kind of stuff. All right, so let me talk about the ugly now, and then we'll wrap up, and I'll scroll through after I'm done here and answer any questions that you have. So the ugly is my psychologist sucked. All right, I'm just gonna say it. She sucked. In fact, I'm not gonna say it on this thread, but I'll give her the letter B. I could tell from the moment that I walked in and met her that she did not have my best interest in mind. I looked at her background before I went there. I saw that she was not a veteran, and so I was a little bit weary about how this exam might go. But again, this was my C&P exam that the VA scheduled, so I didn't have much of a choice. But like I teach in the principles, I did get her name, her phone number, her email, her contact information. So when I get the results of my C&P exam, if I don't like them or I don't agree with it, I'm going to challenge the actual exam, the doctor's credentials. I'm going to challenge the questions that were asked and the general mood of the exam, okay? Now, it's all over the map, all right? You don't get to pick your examiner for your C&P exam, and so you may get somebody who is super veteran friendly, they're a disabled veteran themselves, and they're trying to help you, or you may get somebody like I got today who may be actually trying to decrease your benefits. I will tell you that that's the impression that I got. I felt like she was out to get me, basically. I didn't let her do that, but I felt like that's what she was trying to do. So that's the ugly part of this, and I'm just going to explain real quickly. I went into the office, said hello, and she asked me that question, how are you doing? Right? Well, I wasn't having a particularly good day this morning, so I said, I'm here, and I filed for a VA claim, and that's why I'm here. And she said, okay, and kind of almost like setting the trap. And she wasn't acknowledging, I received your claim, I received your information. She didn't tell me any of that. We moved straight into, she had all of my information I filled out that I talked about, the PCLM5, all those checklists. She had them in hard copy in front of her. And she basically started an interview. And I already have a diagnosis for PTSD, so she didn't ask a ton of questions about my past or about, what happened in the military. She'd ask some, but not as many as the first time around. But so we sit down, and I'm sitting across from her, probably no more than, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 feet. And she asked me a question of how often am I seeing a current psychologist? And I said, I'm not sure, which I really wasn't. Sometimes it's monthly, sometimes it's quarterly. I said, I'm really not sure. And she said, well, with an answer like that, this isn't going to be a very helpful interview. So are you going to talk to me or not? And it's a good thing I was having a moment of clarity where I knew it was not going to behoove me to debate or argue or do anything. But I can tell you it took every bit of restraint within me to not want to reach across the room and freaking punch her in the face, okay? I'm just telling you that. So if you've ever been angry, if you've ever believed that somebody didn't have your back, this was one of those moments, and it got me super pissed off. So I took a pause and tried to calm myself down a little bit, and we proceeded with the interview, and I answered as much as I could. I did bring with me a statement in support of a claim that I had written myself about my symptoms, and I did bring along with me an actual printout of the DBQ for mental health PTSD and how I would have filled it out. I didn't show her that, but I had it with me because sometimes I have issues with my memory loss, and I wanted to make sure that I had the facts because she was fact-checking. She asked stuff about a little bit about my past, about my military history. She asked about my deployment to Afghanistan, what I was exposed to, and then my current symptoms today. What limitations am I having Tell me about your work. What do you do? What does that mean? Do you work at a desk? Have you had any issues with coworkers? Have you had any angry outbursts? She asked all kinds of questions really about the present. She wanted to know, since I already had a diagnosis of PTSD, she really was deep diving my current symptoms and how severe they were. So long story short, we got through the interview painfully. This woman did not have my back. I was very uncomfortable during the entire interview. In fact, I had a lot of anxiety even just being there. And we got up and I walked out of the room and she said, "Thank you." And I said nothing and just walked out. She told me, the last thing she told me was, "Okay, well, I have all the information I need now. And I have about 1,000 pages of your VA file and your medical records and all of that." So again, she didn't tell me any of this stuff up front. It's not like she was trying to help me at all. I felt like she was out to get me. What I would tell you guys is you've got to know your claim inside and out. You need to go on My Healthy Vet on the VA platform. You need to download there's a blue ribbon section on My Healthy Vet, all right, where you can do secure messaging with the VA and you can request prescription refills and all that. You need to be intimately familiar with your case, with what the disability is, what it says in your file, any secure messaging you've had between you and the VA on My Healthy Vet, that goes in and is a part of your official medical file. Okay, so I had all that, I knew what it said, and I was prepared with information. I had a very good understanding of the questions I was going to be asked going in, which I think is helpful, especially if you do have trouble with memory. But I'm going to leave you guys with this, okay? I would go into these C&P exams, especially if it's for a reevaluation or if you filed for an increase, even if you filed for the first time. I would expect if they've booked an appointment for you with a private doctor, they may or may not be a veteran, they may or may not like the military, they may or may not have your best interest in mind. So what I would tell you is stick to the facts, know your claim inside and out. You are there for one purpose, and that's to conduct the exam, get them truthful and honest information. Again, this is not the time to have your best day. You need to be extremely vulnerable with them about things that are going on. So for me, I talked about issues I'm having in my marriage. I talked about sexual problems. I talked about anger issues, depression at work, things like that. So you really have to be prepared to tell the truth, but you've got to be vulnerable with that truth and open up and share those details which are going to strengthen your case, okay? Which ties to compensation. So, all right, I'm going to post the link. Ask your questions below. I'm going to answer them here as soon as I can. I'm going to post the link, though, to all those checklists so you can see them because it's critical. Guys, you've got to arm yourself with information if you're going to be successful, and that's what I want for you more than anything. We're all insiders here, veterans helping veterans get the VA disability compensation you deserve. Okay? Brian Reese here. Love you guys. I'm out from San Antonio. I hope that was helpful. C&P exam for PTSD, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? We'll talk to y'all soon. See ya.